number 12, I have Systematic Chaos. You're gonna put that up on the screen, Neil?
Yep. Go ahead and start talking. I got you. I got you covered.
All right. So this one, what I like about this one is the first track just blows you away. It just grabs you. It's a 9-minute epic. One of my favorite Dream Theater songs. Classic Dream Theater at their best on this track. I love the melodic lead played by John Petrucci on this one. The execution is great. The intensity. It's got that almost like a Smashing Pumpkins vibe with that fuzz sound that he uses in part of the song. So he's changing up his distorted sound a little bit. The execution on this is really good. Even on the deep cuts. The Dark Eternal Night is a strong track with a super heavy riff at the end. I love that song. That's a Dream Theater classic. You're saying here, or you're hearing a little bit of the band's Muse influence. They kind of crept into their songwriting there, courtesy of Mike Portnoy. You can hear that on Prophets of War. I think the downside on this one, in Constant Motion is well executed, but the Mike Portnoy backing vocals come across as a little bit cheesy. In the Presence of Enemies, Part 2 is a bit of a letdown to me. I just never thought that was a great way to end that album. It's a little too dark, and it doesn't. I don't think it's a great compliment to Part 1. Repentance, which is Part 4 of Mike Portnoy's 12-step suite, sounds like Dream Theater trying to be Tool, but they're not good at that kind of song. And the reason we know they're not good at that kind of song is they never tried it again. So those are my positives and negatives. I will say, and I like Forsaken too. I think Forsaken's a really good kind of commercial rocker.
Yeah, this album's got a lot. This album's got a lot going for it. Obviously, so it's number 12 on Sean's list. It's also number 12 on my list out of 15. Like Sean said, I think track 1 is a classic Dream Theater song. I think it's one of their best songs. It mixes in odd time, tricky odd time. It goes back to the Metropolis type of 5/5/7 that they continuously go to, and I think we'll hear that on the new album, Parasomnia. But it starts out with that 5 and 7 and 5/5/7, that type of feel on the drums and on the guitar. The first 4 minutes of the song is all instrumental. When James comes in, it sounds powerful and dramatic. So I can't say more about that song. It's definitely a top 10 Dream Theater song for me. I agree with Sean with the rest of the album is a little bit disappointing. I disagree with Sean. I think that the last song, if you give it a chance, it does have some great epic Dream Theater qualities. They do a little bit of an allusion to some of the music off of Metropolis Part 2 in the last track, which is what's the name of the first and last track? In the Presence of Enemies.
Yes.
So the Part 2, which is about 17 minutes long, which is the last track. I think that's a classic Dream Theater epic. It's not one of their best epics. It's not on the level of, say, The Count of Tuscany or Octavarium or Metropolis or Learning to Live. It's not on that level. I think it's a solid epic. I think having that epic puts it above albums like Distance Over Time and The Astonishing and The Dream and Day Unite. So all in all, a good Dream Theater album, but not one of their best. So the next up on the list, and this is on both of our lists, it's the last, well, not the last, but for Mike Portnoy's first tenure, it's his last album, and that was called Black Clouds and Silver Linings. Now, this album, I'll let Sean start talking about it while I get the snip. But why don't you take it from here, Sean? And then I'll pull it up.
Okay, I mean, I can't think of another Dream Theater album where the highs are so high and the lows on the album are so low. I mean, because you have like, I'll give you the positives. I mean, the musicality on songs like Nightmare to Remember and Count of Tuscany is just phenomenal. Beautiful songwriting, beautiful dark melodies on both of them. You know, some great instrumentation um, on both of those tracks. Rite of Passage is a strong song, very enjoyable. I like the heaviness. It's a bit campy because they're trying to go that black. I don't know, maybe a black metal route there, but very enjoyable song. I still listen to it to this day. Um, Again, Nightmare to Remember just blows you away. But as we know, on both the first and last track on this album, Mike Portnoy was doing some backing vocals, and it just didn't work. Um, so that's one of the negatives. Shattered Fortress is, I think, a 12-minute song, and this is part 5 of the 12-step suite. The last was this the last? Yeah, this was the last of the 5.
It's the last
songs.
of his 12, last of his journey through alcoholism. Yeah, or
Right.
recovery from alcoholism.
Yeah. The problem now, this song, the problem with this is it just dumps the riffs and melodies from the first parts, from the first 4 parts of the 5-song, um, the 5-song that makes up the 5 songs that make the 12-step suite. Takes all the riffs and melodies and dumps them into one big pile of shit and repeats everything that they already played. So to me, there's nothing new here. They don't take that giant step to something greater. You know, they're just repeating themselves on this, and that's why I never go back to that song. It's well executed. I mean, all the musicianship is good, but musically, that doesn't seem to. Maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe you can correct me.
No, I mean, I think all in all, it's look, we have this ranked 11 out of 15. So obviously we both have it ranked 11 out of 15. So we probably both love the album, but in the context of Dream Theater and all they've done in their career, this isn't one of their best efforts. You know, similar to Systematic Chaos, it was recorded right around the same time. This was 2000, or it was released in 2009. Systematic Chaos in 2007. It does have in my opinion, one of the best Dream Theater songs musically, progressively. It's an epic in the Count of Tuscany. I think it's one of their best songs. I think, you know, their last A View from the Top of the World tour, they closed with it. It was their encore. So obviously, it's a very popular song with fans.
With the fan base,
I think the band recognizes that. The lyrics are. I'm not going to give them an A on the lyrics. I think they're okay. Right. I don't think they're great lyrics. Having said that, Dream Theater isn't known for great lyrics. You know, if you put them under a microscope, they don't stand the test of time as maybe someone like Neil Peart's lyrics do, or maybe some of the songwriters, singer-songwriters over the generations have. So, but that's holding them to a very high standard. It's just not a strength of theirs. But as far as musicianship, I think the Count of Tuscany is incredible. I think that the opening track, which is called A Nightmare to Remember, Mike Portnoy does some amazing things on double bass in that song. He plays triplets, then he plays 8th notes, then he plays 16th notes. He mixes that up and makes it very interesting to listen to. One of the things Mike Portnoy has said over the years is by winning these polls in Modern Drummer as the best drummer of the year, the best album of the year, all these awards that he's won, he feels like he has to give a gift, or he doesn't feel like it, but he does give a gift to his fans with every album. And I kind of felt that in that song, and that he's playing these really complicated parts. Not so much that it's perfect for the song, but it just kind of pleases the fans. And I think that was kind of cool the way he did that with the double bass work on that song, playing 16.
The double bass, the double bass on that is really impressive on that track. I mean, I got to go back to the a couple points here. He brings in the death growl at the end of Nightmare to Remember, and I'm just, what you know, if you want to try that, it's okay because all the progressive metal bands in the last 15 or 20 years have tried to. That's kind of creeped into their a lot of their songs, or at least some of their songs, and it's okay to try that. But if you want to try that, why not call someone you know who knows how to do this? Like Mike Portnoy is friends with these guys like Michael Ackerfeld, or someone you could call Philip Anselmo who could do it. Why not bring one of those guys in for a day and let them try it? And if it doesn't work, you throw it out. But more likely than not, it would have been better than what he put on there.
Well, this is the thing about this album. It's the last Portnoy album, and I think Portnoy had kind of, and I think you would probably acknowledge this, he kind of pushed it a little bit with the death growls and,
Yeah.
With that in particular, the heaviness of the album, how Systematic Chaos had some of the growling, had some of the really heavy death metal. I don't know about death metal, but it had a really raunchy feel. And some of it worked and some of it didn't, but I think he kind of pushed his band. I think he kind of pushed some of his bandmates a little bit too far. And once they had that musical difference, I think some of the personalities started to rub each other the wrong way. And I think it was actually a good thing for the band that they made a change at the time, and they kind of went in a different. They kind of, kind of gave new life to the band and ended up getting nominated for 3 Grammys and 5 albums without Mike Portnoy. And I think they wouldn't. I don't think that would have happened if Portnoy had stayed in the band. I don't think the band would have thrived if he had stayed in the band past this album. I think now that he's back and everybody's in a different place and he's more mature and everybody else is older and more respectful of each other, and I think Portnoy kind of has. It seems like he's found a place back in the band, and he does certain things really well. But I think it was a positive thing that he had kind of pushed the musical direction in one way so far these last 2 albums, and Labrie has acknowledged this. He kind of pushed it to such an extreme with the growling and the heaviness that I think the band needed a change, both personality-wise and also musically. So this is kind of a turning point for the band in a way. Like I said, some of it works with Count of Tuscany. Some of it I don't think works. I don't think it sounds like Dream Theater. And but things change, people change, and that's how things shook out.
Yeah, so, he brought I think he had been influenced by Blackwater Park, which is kind of highly regarded as Opeth's masterpiece of progressive metal masterpiece. So I think you can even see it in the album cover, and especially when you listen to Nightmare to Remember, it sounds like some of the stuff off Blackwater Park. But yeah, he was bringing stuff to the band. Definitely, I agree that they were better off with, they needed to go their separate ways after this.
Yeah. So the last one we're going to talk about here, I'm sorry, second to last one is your number 10, which is one we already talked about. I have it ranked lower. You have it a little bit higher, and we're talking about Distance Over Time again. This is your number 10 out of 15. I had it 13. I had it lower, so I'll let you take over and give your comments on this album and what makes it a little bit higher than these other albums.
All right. Well, you got. I mean, there's some takeaways from here. First of all, Barstool Warrior is a great song. It's catchy, moving, dramatic. It's got that memorable lead guitar melody, which I love, by John Petrucci. I like the lyrics. You got 2 different stories. One about the guy sitting in the bar. He's got all these regrets, and then another about the lady who was assaulted, I think. So some really memorable lyrics. Just a great song. A great example of good songwriting here. I like that they proved they hadn't lost their way after the astonishing Untethered Angel. It's a great opener. reminds me a little bit of Pull Me Under with that heavy metal undercurrent that John Petrucci's playing and LaBrie's soaring vocals on top of that. They do a good job following that up with Paralyzed, good hypnotic heavy riff, which was actually written by Mike Mangini. Then Fall Into the Light is super, as a, just a stone cold classic. You got that slow tempo instrumental section in the middle that reminds you of The Unforgiven, very dramatic with the great dynamics. And I love the big pounding bass on some of the deeper cuts like S2N. And as you said before, there's some good, there's a good deep cut called Just Out of Reach, where John Petrucci gives kind of his best Joe Satriani impression. Great solo there. Kind of a Satriani inspired song on that. The downside on this album, I have you kind of touched on this with Pale Blue Dot and At Wit's End. These songs are good, and there's some really good instrumentation on them, but they don't have that classic pompous feel that I think they need to have, and they're not especially memorable songs. So I think it's a really strong album, but I think if this album was going to push up on the list, those two songs would needed to be stronger. Maybe this will grow on me more because it's still a pretty new album. It's only about 6 or 7 years old. But yeah, I think for me that those would be the downsides. But I still listen to this album regularly, and I love the production on it. I think they did a great job with the production.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate. It's not one of my favorite albums, but I think there's something to be said for some of the songwriting. Like I said, the downside is that they kept it short. All of the songs are mostly 6-7 minutes, couple of longer songs, but there's no epics, which is disappointing. When I listen to a Dream Theater album, when they release an album, I want to see an epic. I want to see a 10-minute. I want to see a couple 10-minute songs. Yeah, this album just kind of fell short as far as my expectations. But I can see why Sean likes. Some of the songs are classic Dream Theater. They use some of the classic motifs of Dream Theater. I think At Wit's End has a great progressive feel with some build up and some great guitar and dramatic melodies. But like I said, I think Pale Blue Dot is a disappointment. I think Viper King is a totally disappointment. I think they should have not released that with the album. I think that should have been a B-side. If they can still do that, I don't think that should have been included as a bonus track. I think the fact that they made it a bonus track kind of tells you what you need to know, that it really doesn't even belong on the album. But having said that, like I said, there's a lot of great drumming on this album. It was recorded in a massive, big house, big room where the drums sound voluminous and the drums are resonating. And again, there's some great musicianship. I like on the first track, I like Rudess does a great keyboard solo. I think it's short, which actually works in this song. I think he uses the organ effect. Sounds really cool. It's short. It's catchy. I think it's one of his better solos. So that's one of the highlights for me. But like I said, that was lower on my list. I can see putting it a little bit higher, but we're going to move on to my number 10. So we've gone through a few albums now. And my number 10 is self-titled release, which obviously is called Dream Theater. It was released in 2013, I believe. This is actually, of all the Dream Theater albums released since I don't remember why, but it was of all the Dream Theater tours and all of the Dream Theater releases, this is the one album that I didn't see on tour. I wish I had seen it, but I'll say it's a good. I think it's a solid album. I think there's some really good songs on it. I don't put it higher on my list because I think although the epic is good and it's better than some of the other stuff, like I think it's a better album than Systematic Chaos and Black Thoughts and Silver Linings, but I think the epic it's not as good as Octavarium. It's not as good as Learning to Live. It's not as good as Metropolis. It's not as good as some of the songs on Awake. But I will say it does have, one of the songs was nominated for a Grammy, the first track, The Enemy Within, I think it's called. Some incredible guitar work on that. There's some incredible drum, Mangini's drums are incredible. He really shows off on that first track with his, the speed of his double bass and the speed of his snare drum and the speed of his hands. Just an incredible track. Like I said, it got nominated for a Grammy. I think The Looking Glass is a great song. It combines some great double bass drums. It combines some great musicianship. It has a pop feel. It has Labrie sounds great on that song. He does a great job making it kind of like a mainstream song. And I think this is just a great album. Not one of my top ones. It falls 10 out of 15. Obviously, I'm a huge Dream Theater fan. I do listen to this album. One of the other highlights on the album is I can't remember the name of it. I think it's track 5. Do you have that in front of you, Sean?
Let me see.
Anyway, it's got some great keyboards. It's dramatic. I think it's a 7-minute song. It's some of the
bigger picture.
The Bigger Picture, yeah. I think that's a great tune. I think there's some great dramatic keyboards. James sounds incredible. There's also what was one of the positives of, kind of turning that corner after Black Clouds and Silver Linings is that John Mayung started writing songs again. I started writing lyrics again, and he has a good set of lyrics on this album called Surrender to Reason. I think that's interesting. I think it's good to get diversity within a band, have everybody writing lyrics if they want to. I think this is a really cool song about, how he's been in a relationship with this person for a long period of time. And sometimes you just got to say to yourself, you know what, I'm not going to fight this. This person's making sense. I think the lyrics really hit home for anybody who's been in a long-term relationship and kind of has these little squabbles. And at some point, you just go, you know what, this person's right, I'm wrong, let's move on. So I think having Mayung back writing lyrics again, which he did partially on Dramatic Turn of Events, he wrote part of a song. But this is the first full song he wrote, going back all the way to the 1999 release, I think was the last time he had written a song for the band as far as lyrically. So that's one of my favorite songs off the album. The last track is an epic. I believe it's 19 minutes long. It's got some great guitar. It's got a great, really awesome thick guitar riff in it. There's some orchestration, which I really like. I think it's the first time they actually just hired an orchestra. Somebody agreed to do the orchestration. There's like a 2 or 3 or 4 minute section where it's just an orchestra playing music, something that most metal bands don't do. Of course, Dream Theater did it. So that's kind of my thoughts. But what are you thinking, Sean?
Yeah, I have this much higher. But yeah, you make some good points there. I think they overall, just I thought this was the first time that Mangini was really involved, and he sounds really good on this album. Whereas the first album he did with them, he was really just kind of they wrote the album without him. So this time he was involved, and it just sounds like a much better effort on this one. I'll get to my comments later on that.
Yeah, I will say that I think, on this particular album, I know it was his first contribution to helping write the songs. I'm talking about Mike Mangini. And like I said, the drumming is incredible. I think the drums are a bit over processed.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. I think the snare sounds a little bit. I think they were trying to get the snare to sound like Images and Words. They did that for a few albums with Mangini when Petrucci took over as producer. I think when they mixed it, I think they tried to get a little bit too close to Images and Words. And I think some of it comes off as being over-processed and overproduced. That's just my opinion. I think if they ever decide to remix an album, I think this would be one that they could remix and make the drums sound a bit more organic. Other than that, the musicianship is incredible. It's like you said, it's the first real Mangini album because Petrucci pretty much wrote most of the drums on a drum machine for a dramatic turn of events. So this is a very interesting album. It has a place in the context of Dream Theater Collection. Like I said, I have it number 10, so it's not my favorite, but I think it's a solid effort.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
All right. So why
I
don't we
guess that'll
stop
be it for
there?
now. That's 10 through 15. We've talked quite a bit. We'll take a break here, and we'll be back with our top 9.
All right. Yeah. So that took about an hour.